Christ consciousness, Christ was not a person. This is what we have to understand. Christ consciousness was a huge group consciousness. Now, what you're calling Jesus, which is the person that the Christ consciousness funneled itself through as a channel, basically, was just the first person to bring Christ consciousness down to the planet. That's all that person was. Christ consciousness, which is the most important thing to understand because it is making a massive resurgence at this time on the planet, is very simple. It is choice. I literally just want you to take that word, write it down. It is choice. When you're talking about Christ, you're talking about free will, which is what choice is all about. Versus Luciferian consciousness, which is determinism. Now, what's really, really important for you, right, to understand is that there is nothing inherently evil about determinism. Now, determinism is the opposite of choice. It's action-reaction, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So there's nothing inherently wrong about determinism. It was a thought within the mind of God. Determinism was a thought within the mind of God, and so is the concept of choice. Now, the reason why it's so important to decide to be part of Christ consciousness is because it's a choice. It's to say, I choose free will, right? If you exercise your choice, free will, you are in alignment with Christ consciousness. Fear, the frequency of fear, is a polarizing vibration. It is the exact opposite of love. Most people think hate is the opposite of love. It's actually fear. To love is to take something as thyself. To fear is to push something away from yourself. So Christ, the ultimate choice, basically, that Christ was teaching about. Christ consciousness is all about choice. The ultimate choice is the choice to love, which is to take something as part of thyself. If you're in a state of fear, and this is my major issue with Christians in general, okay? Christians in general, they love to propagate fear. Fear the devil, fear demons, fear people who XYZ, at the same time as talking about love. And it is a complete contradiction. So the more Christian you are, ironically, the more capable you are of taking other things as thyself, including demons, including that which you want to push away from yourself. And this is the ultimate teaching of Christ that is coming back, thank God, now in this day and age. Christ, right, coming from choice consciousness, coming from this incredibly enlightened space, understood that there is no such thing as other, right? He understood this. This is a person who understood that the very person nailing him to the cross, so to speak, was him. He understood the concept. So there was not this atmosphere of, I will do this to bleed myself of sin, to rid all people of sin. It wasn't this huge martyrdom complex that people are making this out to be. What happened here is that besides that being a huge part of Jewish culture consciousness, is that human society tends to propagate the kind of human behavior that benefits society. That's what it does, right? So it doesn't benefit us for people to be fighting, so let's teach against that. It doesn't benefit us right now, thanks to property ownership, for us to be having sex with anybody we want to have sex with, because this guy has to have that woman to have that child who inherits my land, right? So property ownership changed the way that we as human beings structure our concept of morality. So often the idea of morality has nothing to do with universal objective truth. It has everything to do with the way that we want to keep control in our social structures. And what is an issue for me is that we are still holding, religion basically is holding together government. The government's the one that decides what we need our social hierarchy to look like and social order to look like. And that social order is still in place from thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years ago. It was dysfunctional to begin with. We are way beyond it. It is time to move beyond it. Jesus was trying to get people to move beyond it. Half the people who were listening to him didn't understand what the hell that meant. Now, I have to tell you this. If I have people who live with me every day, right? I have people who live with me every day they see me. Every day I teach them. And if they were responsible for writing down my teachings, they'd completely mess it up. Completely. Because the way that their consciousness is structured is not high enough right now to grasp those concepts. It's going to go through the filter of their current consciousness. So what you've got with, things like the Bible and much of what you've learned about Christ. This is why I really want people to be able to tap into Christ consciousness themselves, right? So you have that access to Christ. Is because the filter, right, that this Christ consciousness was coming from and through originally, it's like caveman type consciousness. Right? Christ was not an enemy to Luciferian consciousness. Actually, he didn't even know Luciferian consciousness to begin with. But let's pretend he did, because what Christians have set this up as is Christ versus the devil, right? That is not how Christ would think. Christ is the kind of consciousness because it's free will, and free will is basically the choice to love. There is no greater choice than to love one's opposite, or to love, hate, or to love, whatever other vibration it is, because in the loving of it, you bring it closer to yourself. So if Christ was a person alive today and Lucifer was a person alive today, Christ would make a practice of loving Lucifer. That's the truth.